The discovery: Aisha, a curious and bookish high school student, stumbles upon an old, dusty diary in the corner of the school library. The diary is hidden behind a row of forgotten books, and its ornate leather cover catches her attention. She's intrigued by the initials LS inscribed on the front and decides to start reading. Inside, the diary introduces her to a former student named Leila, who recounts her experiences at the school. What begins as a typical student's journal quickly turns into a riveting love story between Leila and a mysterious boy named Idris. Aisha feels an immediate pull to Leila's words, finding them almost too real. Leila's first meeting: as Aisha reads on, she learns about Leila's first encounter with Idris. Leila describes him as tall, with dark, intense eyes that seem to hold secrets. Idris is quiet, always sitting alone at the back of the classroom, and Leila can't help but feel drawn to him. They start interacting during an art project, where Idris surprises Leila by revealing his incredible artistic talent. The diary describes how they slowly become friends, though Leila admits that there is something unsettling about Idris, as though a shadow constantly hangs over him. Aisha, engrossed in the unfolding story, starts to wonder what happened to them and why the diary was left behind. A glimpse of romance: Aisha is captivated by Leila's blossoming feelings for Idris. The more Leila writes, the deeper she falls for him. Idris, however, remains an enigma, kind and attentive one moment, then distant and cold the next. Leila writes about their long conversations in the art room, where they would talk about everything from their favorite books to the mysteries of the universe. Idris seems to understand her in a way no one else does. Aisha feels a growing connection not only to Leila but also to Idris, and she starts noticing a boy at school who resembles him. Boy named Iman. The resemblance is uncanny, and Aisha's curiosity begins to blur the line between fiction and reality. The mysterious boy: Aisha finds herself drawn to Iman, the boy who looks so much like Idris from Leila's diary. Iman is quiet, always sitting alone in the cafeteria, and there's an air of mystery around him. He seems distant from everyone else, just like Idris. Aisha can't help but wonder if the similarities are merely coincidence, or if there's something more to it. As she continues to read the diary, she learns more about Idris' past. Leila describes how he had transferred to their school after an unexplained incident at his previous one, and how rumors swirled about him being involved in something dark. Aisha grows increasingly intrigued and uneasy about both Idris and Iman. Dark secrets unveiled: the diary takes a darker turn as Leila delves into Idris' troubled past. She writes about overhearing a conversation between Idris and another student, where they mention a tragedy involving his younger brother. Idris is evasive when Leila tries to ask him about it, and it becomes clear that this event has deeply scarred him. Aisha, meanwhile, begins to notice strange coincidences in her own life. Iman, the boy at her school, seems to be appearing wherever she goes, at the library, the park, even near her house. Aisha tries to brush it off, but a sense of foreboding creeps in as she becomes more engrossed in Leila and Idris' story. A growing connection: as Leila's relationship with Idris deepens in the diary, so does Aisha's fascination with Iman. Leila describes the quiet, intimate moments she shares with Idris, where they seem to understand each other without words. He opens up about his love for art and how it helps him cope with the pain of his past. Aisha begins to notice similar qualities in Iman. One afternoon, she sees him sketching in his notebook, and the resemblance to Idris' artistic nature is startling. Though Aisha has never spoken to Iman, she feels an undeniable pull toward him, as though the lines between the diary and her own life are starting to blur. The shadows of the past: the diary reveals that Leila has started noticing strange behavior from Idris. He becomes more withdrawn, often disappearing for days at a time without explanation. Leila tries to confront him, but Idris deflects, growing increasingly defensive. Aisha, engrossed in the diary, feels a chill as she reads these entries, especially since Iman, too, seems to have a mysterious aura about him. One day, Aisha tries to approach Iman after school, but he vanishes before she can speak to him. The parallels between Leila's story and her own life grow more unsettling by the day. The vanishing: in the diary, Leila writes about a time when Idris disappeared for over a week. When he finally returned, he was different, colder, more distant, as though something had changed. He refused to talk about where he had been, and the tension between him and Layla grew. Aisha can't shake the eerie feeling that something similar is happening with Iman. She hasn't seen him at school for several days, and no one seems to know where he is. The more she reads, the more she feels as though she is living in the shadow of Layla's story, with Iman playing the role of Idris. A confession. Layla finally confronts Idris about his behavior in the diary. In an emotional conversation, Idris reveals the full extent of the trauma he's been hiding. He confesses that his younger brother died in a tragic accident, one that Idris feels responsible for. This loss has haunted him, and the guilt has driven him to push people away, including Layla. Aisha is deeply moved by this revelation, and she begins to wonder if Iman is carrying a similar burden. She becomes even more determined to find out more about him, but every time she tries to approach him, something stops her. Haunted by the past, as Aisha reaches the 10th chapter of the diary, she starts to feel a deep connection to Layla's emotions. Layla's writing becomes more erratic as she describes the strain in her relationship with Idris. She feels helpless, unable to break through the wall Idris has built around himself. Aisha reflects on her own life and realizes she has been avoiding facing her own insecurities. Reading about Layla's heartache makes her question why she is so invested in Iman, a boy she hardly knows. Yet, she can't deny the growing sense of urgency to uncover the truth, both in the diary and in her own world. Strange occurrences. Aisha notices increasingly strange coincidences as she continues reading the diary. In Layla's world, things start to go wrong: small accidents, forgotten events, and unsettling dreams that seem to echo her waking life. Aisha starts experiencing the same. She misplaces her keys, hears footsteps behind her when she's alone, and begins having vivid dreams of an unknown figure reaching out to her. The eerie resemblance between Idris and Iman becomes harder to ignore. Aisha's grip on reality starts to weaken, leaving her questioning whether the diary is merely a story or a warning from the past. The search for answers. Aisha becomes determined to uncover more about Layla and Idris. She asks an old librarian about any records of former students but hits a dead end. There's no mention of a Layla or Idris anywhere in school records. Aisha finds this odd, considering the depth of the diary's detail. She also digs into Iman's background, learning little except that he moved to the school a few months ago under unclear circumstances. The more she searches for answers, the more she feels like she's on the brink of discovering something dark, something the school has kept hidden. A warning in the margins. One day, Aisha notices something she hadn't before: scribbled notes in the margins of the diary, as if someone else had been reading it before her. The notes warn her to stop reading, and to leave before it's too late. These cryptic warnings send chills down her spine. Aisha hesitates, considering whether to heed the warnings, but she feels too deep into the story to quit now. The diary has become an obsession, and she knows she's getting closer to the truth. But what truth? Shadows in the night. That night, Aisha dreams again of the mysterious figure. In this dream, the figure comes closer than ever before. He whispers her name, then she wakes up in a cold sweat, her heart pounding. Aisha realizes with a shock that the figure looks like Iman. The lines between the diary and her own reality continue to blur, and she wonders if the warning in the margins was a sign that she is getting too close to something dangerous. But instead of scaring her away, it only strengthens her resolve to uncover the truth. The encounter. Aisha finally gathers the courage to approach Iman directly. She finds him alone in the library, sitting in the same spot she found the diary. The tension is palpable as she introduces herself, her heart racing. Iman is aloof, just like Idris was in Layla's diary, but there's something in his eyes that suggests he knows more than he lets on. Aisha tries to bring up the diary indirectly, but Iman cuts the conversation short and leaves abruptly. Aisha is left feeling more confused than ever, but now she's sure of one thing: Iman is connected to the diary somehow. A deepening mystery. Aisha continues reading the diary, hoping for more clues. Layla writes about a strange change in Idris after their emotional confession. He becomes colder and more distant, as if something inside him has shifted. Layla suspects that Idris is hiding more than he revealed, and she fears that his guilt over his brother's death might lead him down a dangerous path. Aisha can't shake the feeling that the same thing is happening with Iman. She starts following him around school, but he remains elusive, always vanishing just when she's about to confront him again. The confrontation desperate for answers, Aisha corners Iman in the hallway after school. She blurts out her suspicions about the diary, accusing him of knowing something about it. Iman's reaction is startling. He denies any connection to the diary, but there's a flicker of recognition in his eyes that Aisha doesn't miss. He tells her to stay away from him, warning that she's meddling in things she doesn't understand. His words echo the warnings in the margins of the diary, and Aisha is left shaken, but more determined than ever to find the truth. Secrets unveiled in the diary, Layla begins to uncover the truth about Idris' past. She discovers that Idris was more involved in his brother's death than he let on. Layla writes about how she found a series of letters between Idris and his brother, revealing a deep-seated resentment that may have led to the fatal accident. Aisha is horrified by this revelation and wonders if Iman, too, is hiding something about his past. She decides to dig deeper into his life, but each step she takes only raises more questions, as if the truth is deliberately eluding her. A warning dream. Aisha has another vivid dream, this time of Layla herself. In the dream, Layla pleads with Aisha to stop reading the diary, warning her that Idris' fate was sealed the moment she uncovered his secret. Layla's tearful face lingers with Aisha when she wakes. The warning feels too real to ignore, but Aisha is too consumed by the mystery to stop. She wonders what exactly happened to Layla and Idris, and why the diary was hidden in the first place. The sense of foreboding grows stronger, but so does Aisha's need to know how it all ends. A discovery in the library. Aisha returns to the library where she first found the diary, hoping to find more clues. As she combs through the shelves, she discovers another old, forgotten book that seems connected to the diary. It's a yearbook from decades ago, and as she flips through the pages, her heart skips a beat. There, among the black and white photos of students, is a boy who looks exactly like Idris and Iman. Aisha is stunned. This boy, identified as Idris Saleh, attended the school 50 years ago. But how can that be? The pieces of the puzzle are starting to come together, but they make no sense. The past repeats itself. Shocked by the discovery in the yearbook, Aisha wonders if she stumbled upon something supernatural. Could Iman be connected to Idris in some way beyond mere resemblance? She continues to read the diary, where Layla begins to notice unsettling changes in Idris' behavior. He becomes distant, almost as if he's fading from reality itself. Aisha begins to fear that whatever happened to Idris might be happening to Iman as well, and, by extension, to her. The weight of the mystery presses down on her, and she starts to feel as though time is running out. A haunting revelation. The diary reveals that Layla discovered something shocking. Idris had been experimenting with dark rituals, trying to contact his deceased brother. His grief had turned into an obsession, and Layla realized that Idris was no longer the person she had fallen in love with. He had become consumed by guilt and dark forces. Aisha is horrified by this revelation, but it also explains the strange occurrences she's been experiencing. She wonders if Iman is involved in something similar, and if by reading the diary, she has inadvertently become part of the same dangerous cycle. Aisha's investigation. Aisha starts researching occult practices, trying to make sense of what she read in the diary. She discovers old legends about spirits trapped in cycles of time, forced to repeat their mistakes until they are freed. The more she learns, the more convinced she becomes that Idris and Iman are somehow connected through this cycle. Aisha's friends notice her growing obsession, but when she tries to explain her theories, they think she's losing her grip on reality. Alone and isolated, Aisha becomes more determined than ever to break the cycle and save Iman, if it's not already too late. The diary's dark ending. Aisha reaches the final pages of the diary, where Layla describes her last days with Idris. Their relationship has crumbled under the weight of Idris' secrets, and Layla fears for his soul. She writes about how Idris attempted one final ritual to bring his brother back, but something went horribly wrong. The diary ends abruptly, with Layla expressing her terror that she might lose Idris forever. Aisha is left with a chilling sense of unfinished business. The diary's abrupt ending mirrors her own uncertainty, and she knows that whatever happened to Idris is about to happen again with Iman. An unexpected ally. Aisha is approached by an unexpected ally, an eccentric history teacher named Mr. Khaled, who has noticed her recent obsession with the past. He reveals that he knows about Idris and Leila's story. Mr. Khaled explains that the school has a long history of tragic love stories, many of which seem to follow the same pattern. Aisha is shocked to learn that others before her have tried to uncover the same mystery but failed. Mr. Khaled wants her to stop before she meets the same fate as those before her, but Aisha is undeterred. She believes she can break the cycle where others have failed. The connection deepens. Aisha becomes closer to Iman despite her initial fear. He starts to open up to her, sharing small details about his life that eerily resemble Idris' experiences. The more time they spend together, the more Aisha feels like she's living the events of the diary all over again. Iman admits that he's had strange dreams and memories that don't feel like his own. Aisha realizes that he, too, is trapped in the cycle, though he's unaware of it. She decides not to tell him about the diary just yet, fearing it might push him away. The ritual. Aisha finds detailed instructions for the ritual Idris attempted in the final pages of the diary. She becomes fixated on the idea that this ritual might be the key to breaking the cycle. However, the more she reads, the more dangerous it sounds. The ritual involves opening a gateway to the spirit world, a risky endeavor that could result in disaster if done incorrectly. Aisha debates whether she should attempt it herself, but her fear of what might happen holds her back. Still, she keeps the instructions close, just in case she decides to take the plunge. The school's dark history. Mr. Khaled shares more of the school's dark history with Aisha. He tells her about other students who, like Idris, became obsessed with the occult and attempted to contact the dead. Each time, the result was tragic. Students disappeared, lost their minds, or were found dead under mysterious circumstances. Aisha is horrified but also intrigued. She believes these stories are all connected to the same cycle of tragedy that Idris and Leila were part of. She becomes more convinced than ever that she has to find a way to break the pattern, or risk losing herself and Iman to the same fate. A chilling encounter. Aisha has a chilling encounter with Iman. During a quiet moment together, he suddenly speaks in a voice that isn't his own. His eyes go blank, and for a brief moment, he seems to become someone else, someone darker and more menacing. Aisha is terrified but tries to hide her fear. When Iman snaps out of it, he seems confused and doesn't remember what just happened. Aisha is convinced that Idris' spirit is somehow possessing Iman, and that the cycle is getting stronger. She knows she's running out of time. The final warning. Aisha receives one final warning from the margins of the diary. This time, the writing is frantic, almost illegible. It warns her that the ritual is dangerous and that once she starts, there's no turning back. Aisha hesitates, wondering if she's making a terrible mistake by continuing. But she feels like she's too far in to stop now. The diary has consumed her life, and she can't let go until she knows how the story ends. She decides to move forward with the ritual, despite the growing sense of dread in her chest. Preparing for the ritual. Aisha spends sleepless nights researching the ritual described in the diary. She gathers the necessary materials, the candles, the herbs, and a mirror, just as the diary outlined. Each step of the process feels heavier with the weight of the unknown. Mr. Khaled warns her one last time, reminding her that everyone who has attempted this before has met a tragic end. Aisha is torn between fear and determination. She can't shake the belief that she's the one who can finally break the curse. The pull to the ritual is strong, as if something beyond her control is guiding her toward it. The night of the full moon. The diary mentions that the ritual must be performed on the night of a full moon. That night arrives, and Aisha's nerves are on edge. She goes to a secluded area in the woods behind the school, following the instructions step by step. As she lights the candles and sets up the mirror, her hands tremble. Iman hasn't been in school for days, and Aisha is terrified that something has already happened to him. She begins the ritual, chanting the words written in the diary, feeling a strange energy fill the air around her. The wind picks up, and a cold shiver runs down her spine. Crossing the threshold as Aisha stares into the mirror, she feels a strange pull, as if the glass is no longer solid but a portal into another realm. The world around her begins to distort, trees bending unnaturally, shadows lengthening, and the candle flames flickering violently. Aisha feels herself slipping, as though she's crossing into a different world. For a moment, she hears Layla's voice, begging her to stop, but it's too late. Aisha has crossed a threshold she cannot undo. In the mirror, she sees not her reflection but the image of Idris staring back at her with sorrowful eyes. Lost in time, Aisha is thrust into a dreamlike state, where time seems to warp and twist. She's no longer in the woods but in an older version of the school back when Idris was a student. She watches scenes from the past unfold as if she's a ghost unseen by anyone around her. She witnesses Layla and Idris' relationship, their joy and their pain. She feels their emotions as if they were her own. But there's something wrong. Idris looks increasingly hollow, his eyes darkening as the ritual he attempted begins to take hold of him. Aisha realizes that Idris has been trapped in this loop for decades, unable to escape the mistakes of his past. Idris' descent. As Aisha watches Idris' final days, she sees him becoming more erratic and consumed by the dark forces he tried to summon. Layla grows desperate, begging him to stop, but Idris is too far gone. He believes that completing the ritual is the only way to atone for his brother's death. Aisha feels Layla's fear and heartbreak, understanding that Layla, too, was trapped in this cycle of grief and guilt. In the final moments of the vision, Aisha watches in horror as Idris' last attempt at the ritual goes horribly wrong, his spirit becoming fractured and lost in the in-between realm. The aftermath. Aisha wakes up back in the woods, her heart pounding. The ritual didn't go as planned, and nothing has changed. She's shaken, feeling as though she's lost part of herself in the process. The haunting images of Idris' fate linger in her mind. The boundary between the past and the present is thinner than ever, and Aisha realizes that she may be following the same path as Layla. She runs back to the school, desperate to find Iman before it's too late. She fears that, like Idris, he may be consumed by forces beyond their control. A race against time. Iman's disappearance becomes more concerning. He hasn't been seen in days, and Aisha feels time slipping away. She retraces her steps in the diary, hoping to find something she missed that could help her break the curse. She begins to question everything. Was Idris doomed from the start, or was there a way he could have been saved? Aisha's desperation grows as she realizes that the clock is ticking for her and Iman. She feels an invisible force pushing her closer to the same tragic end as Layla and Idris. The confrontation. Aisha finally finds Iman late one night near the school. He seems disoriented, almost as if he's sleepwalking. When she calls his name, he looks at her with eyes that aren't his own. He's become a vessel for something else, something dark. Aisha tries to reach him, but Iman speaks in a voice that isn't his. The spirit of Idris is speaking through him, pleading for release. Aisha realizes that Idris' fractured soul has latched onto Iman, trying to escape the endless cycle. But the power controlling them both is stronger than she anticipated. Aisha feels herself being pulled deeper into the curse. The curse's origin. Mr. Khaled helps Aisha piece together the full history of the curse. It began long before Idris and Layla, rooted in an ancient legend about a love triangle that ended in tragedy centuries ago. The spirits of the original lovers were cast to repeat their mistakes over and over, drawing others into their cycle of heartbreak and loss. Idris, Layla, and now Aisha and Iman were just the latest victims. Aisha realizes that in order to break the cycle, she must find a way to lay the original spirits to rest. But how can she break a curse that's lasted for centuries? Uncovering the truth, Aisha dives deeper into the history of the town and the school. She discovers an old churchyard on the outskirts of town, where the original lovers are said to be buried. The legend tells of a broken vow, the betrayal, and a curse placed by a grieving mother who could not accept the death of her child. Aisha realizes that the curse is not just about love, it's about guilt and the refusal to let go. She believes that if she can find the graves and perform a ritual of her own, she can finally break the curse for good. Iman's struggle as Aisha prepares for her final confrontation. Iman's condition worsens. He begins to lose himself completely, often speaking as Idris and sometimes even Layla. Aisha feels the weight of the curse growing stronger, pulling Iman deeper into the cycle. She tries to reach out to him, but it's as if she's speaking to a ghost. Iman no longer remembers who he is, only that he's trapped in a loop of sorrow and regret. Aisha knows she's running out of time. If she doesn't act soon, Iman's soul will be lost forever, just like Idris. The final preparation. Aisha gathers everything she needs for the final ritual. She feels the presence of the spirits more strongly than ever, almost as if they are watching her, waiting to see what she will do. The air feels thick with anticipation, and Aisha's fear mounts. She can hear whispers in the night, echoes of the past calling to her. But despite the fear, Aisha feels a strange sense of clarity. She knows what she must do, and she's ready to face whatever awaits her. This is her last chance to break the cycle, and she won't let it slip away. The journey to the graves. Aisha sets out for the old churchyard at night, carrying with her the tools for the ritual. The walk is long and eerie, the darkness pressing in around her. She feels as though the spirits are guiding her, pulling her toward the final confrontation. When she arrives, the graves are exactly as she imagined, overgrown, ancient, and forgotten. Aisha kneels before them, feeling the weight of centuries of pain and loss. She knows this is where it all began, and this is where it must end. The spirits awaken as Aisha begins the ritual. She feels the ground tremble beneath her. The spirits of the original lovers rise from the earth, their forms hazy and indistinct. They are not malevolent, but their sorrow is palpable. Aisha speaks to them, telling them that she understands their pain, but that the cycle must end. She begs them to let go of their anger and guilt, to release themselves and all the souls trapped in the curse. For a moment, nothing happens. Then, slowly, the spirits begin to fade, their forms dissolving into the night. Aisha feels a heavy weight lift from her chest, but she knows it's not over yet. Iman's fate. Aisha rushes back to the school, hoping she's done enough to save Iman. She finds him in the same place she left him, sitting by the library, his eyes vacant. For a moment, Aisha fears that she's too late, that the curse has already claimed him. But then, slowly, Iman's eyes clear, and he looks at her with recognition. He's back. Aisha feels an overwhelming sense of relief, but there's still a lingering fear that the curse could return. She knows she can't fully celebrate until she's sure the cycle has been broken for good. A fragile peace. In the days following the ritual, things seem to return to normal. Iman regains his sense of self, though he has no memory of what happened during the time he was under the curse's influence. Aisha tells him everything, and together they try to move forward. But there's still an uneasiness between them, as if the curse is still lurking in the shadows, waiting for its chance to strike again. Aisha remains vigilant, knowing that the peace they've found is fragile and could shatter at any moment. A new beginning. Aisha and Iman decide to leave the school behind. The memories of what they went through are too painful to stay, and they both need a fresh start. They apply to universities far away, hoping that distance will help them heal. As they prepare to leave, Aisha returns to the library one last time. She finds the diary exactly where she left it, but something has changed. The final pages, which had once been filled with warnings and despair, are now blank. Aisha takes this as a sign that the curse has finally been broken. A final goodbye before leaving town, Aisha and Iman visit the graves of the original lovers one last time. The churchyard is peaceful, the air still. Aisha feels a sense of closure, knowing that the spirits have finally found peace. She and Iman say their goodbyes, not just to the town but to the past that has haunted them for so long. As they walk away, Aisha feels lighter than she has in months, ready to embrace whatever the future holds. The last echo. On their way out of town, Aisha hears something, an echo of a voice she once knew. It's faint, almost imperceptible, but unmistakable. It's Idris saying thank you. Aisha pauses, her heart racing, but the moment passes, then the voice fades. She doesn't mention it to Iman, unsure if it was real or just her imagination. Either way, Aisha feels a sense of finality. Idris has found peace, and so has she. Starting over, Aisha and Iman start their new lives at university, far from the town and the curse that once defined them. They try to put the past behind them, focusing on their studies and their future. But the experiences they shared have changed them both, and it's not always easy to move on. Aisha still has nightmares about the ritual, about the spirits she encountered, and sometimes she wonders if they are truly free of the curse. But with Iman by her side, she feels stronger, more grounded in the present. The lingering shadows as the months pass, Aisha begins to notice small, unsettling things. A flicker of movement in the corner of her eye, strange dreams that feel more like memories than fantasies. She tries to ignore them, telling herself that it's just her mind playing tricks on her. But deep down, she knows that the shadows of the past aren't so easily banished. She keeps the diary hidden away in a drawer, afraid to open it again but unable to let it go entirely. The diary returns one day. Aisha comes home to find the diary sitting on her desk, open to a page she doesn't remember writing. The words are faint, almost invisible, but they are there. It's not over. Aisha feels a chill run down her spine. She had hoped the curse was broken, but now she realizes that some things can't be erased so easily. The diary's reappearance is a reminder that the past is never truly gone. Aisha's dilemma. Aisha wrestles with what to do. Should she tell Iman about the diary's return? Should she try to perform another ritual to ensure the spirits stay at rest? Or should she ignore it, hoping that if she doesn't give it attention, it will go away on its own? The uncertainty eats away at her, and she begins to withdraw from Iman, afraid of dragging him back into the darkness. But keeping secrets from him only creates more distance between them, and Aisha knows she can't face this alone. The spirits plead that night. Aisha has a dream. In it, she sees Idris again, but this time he's different. He's not the desperate, haunted figure she once knew. Instead, he looks at her with a calm, almost serene expression. "Help me," he says, his voice soft but insistent. Aisha wakes up, her heart pounding. She realizes that Idris isn't fully at peace yet. There's something unfinished, something he still needs her to do. But what? The forgotten ritual. Aisha returns to the diary, flipping through the pages desperately. In the back, she finds something she missed before, the forgotten ritual, one that wasn't completed when Idris first attempted it. It's a ritual of closure, designed to sever the ties between the living and the dead once and for all. Aisha knows this is the key to ending the curse for good, but the instructions are vague, and the risks are high. If she fails, the spirits could become even more powerful, more dangerous than before. Reaching out, Aisha finally tells Iman everything, the return of the diary, the dream, and the ritual she's found. Iman is understandably shaken, but he trusts Aisha. Together, they decide to attempt the ritual, knowing it's their only chance to truly free themselves from the curse. They gather the materials they need and prepare for one final confrontation with the spirits that have haunted them for so long. The last ritual. The night of the ritual arrives, and Aisha and Iman return to the old churchyard. The air is heavy with tension, and Aisha feels the weight of the spirits around them. They begin the ritual, chanting the words from the diary, calling upon the spirits to finally rest. The ground trembles, and for a moment, Aisha thinks they've failed. But then, slowly, the air clears, and a sense of calm settles over the graveyard. The spirits are gone, their presence lifted from the earth. Aisha knows in her heart that it's finally over. The morning after. The next morning, Aisha and Iman wake up feeling lighter than they have in years. The weight of the curse is gone, and they are free to live their lives without the shadow of the past hanging over them. Aisha feels a sense of peace she never thought she'd find, knowing that the spirits have finally found rest. She and Iman talk about their future, no longer afraid of what might come next. A new beginning. Aisha puts the diary away for good, knowing she'll never need to open it again. She and Iman leave the town behind, ready to start a new chapter of their lives. They've been through so much together, and while the past will always be a part of them, it no longer controls them. As they walk away from the school for the last time, Aisha feels a sense of closure, knowing that the cycle has been broken and they are finally free.